Many of you know, I beat breast cancer, and I've always been a fighter. Treatment for cancer can lead to other serious medical issues.
Every single morning, millions wake up to that radiant television smile. You may see Robin daily, but behind the polished perfection of network TV lies a quiet, agonizing reality that unfolds the moment the cameras stop rolling. At 65, the true narrative of what this iconic anchor endures is a deeply poignant, backstage struggle against a body pushed to its absolute limits. What if the woman lifting an entire nation's spirits is secretly fighting just to hold herself together when the lights go down? A heartbreaking reality today. In her 60s, she is navigating a phase of life where the ghosts of her past medical traumas are constantly knocking at the door. Surviving breast cancer is a monumental feat on its own, but surviving myelodysplastic syndrome, MDS, a rare life-threatening bone marrow disorder, is an entirely different level of physical warfare. The heavy chemotherapy, radiation, and the aggressive bone marrow transplant she underwent over a decade ago saved her life. But they didn't leave her unscathed. Medical treatments of that intensity leave a permanent footprint on the human body. As the years tick by, the long-term side effects of those toxic, life-saving therapies begin to collide with the natural process of aging. Robin has always been incredibly candid about the fact that her health is a daily management project. At 65, the lingering fatigue, the joint pain, and the heightened vulnerability of a compromised immune system are quiet, constant companions. Yet, the demands of a flagship morning show like Good Morning America are notoriously brutal. The lifestyle requires waking up in the pitch black of 3 a.m., maintaining high cognitive energy for hours, and constantly traveling to cover breaking news under immense stress. For a healthy person in their 20s, this schedule causes severe burnout. For a 65-year-old two-time cancer and bone marrow transplant survivor, it is an act of sheer defiance against biology. The public sees the flawless execution, the sharp journalistic instincts, and the effortless charisma. What they don't see are the rigorous prep routines, the specialized physical therapies, and the meticulous pacing required to keep her body functioning at an elite level. There is a profound, almost heartbreaking beauty in this daily ritual. Robin refuses to let her physical limitations dictate her life, but the sheer effort it takes to maintain that standard is immense. Every time she leans into the camera and delivers the news with that trademark grace, she is drawing from a well of reserve energy that has been depleted and refilled more times than anyone should ever have to endure. It is a quiet, ongoing battle that happens away from the headlines, proving that her greatest act of bravery isn't just surviving the initial crisis, it is choosing to keep pushing forward, day after day, long after the world thinks the battle has been won. You don't get that kind of unshakable perspective without surviving some serious wreckage. And for Robin, the storm hit when she was right at the top. The double shadow, cancer, MDS, and the fight for survival. For half a decade, Robin Roberts had been flying high as the heart and soul of Good Morning America. She had navigated the intense transition from sports journalism to daytime network television with absolute grace, winning over millions of viewers with an effortless warmth that you simply cannot fake. But in 2007, that seamless ascent ground to a terrifying halt. It started with a routine self-examination. Robin discovered a lump in her breast, and the subsequent diagnosis was a punch to the gut. Early-stage, triple-negative breast cancer. This isn't just any cancer. Triple-negative is notoriously aggressive, lacks the common hormone receptors that target modern therapies, and disproportionately impacts Black women with higher mortality rates. Instead of retreating into the privacy of her own home to deal with the shock, Robin made a choice that would define the rest of her public life. She decided to turn her private mess into a public message. She announced her diagnosis right there on the air, bringing her audience along for every agonizing step of the ride. Viewers watched in awe as she continued to show up at the anchor desk while undergoing a brutal 8-month regimen of 8 rounds of chemotherapy, followed by 6 grueling weeks of radiation. She spoke candidly about the soul-crushing fatigue, the total body aches, and the frightening numbness of neuropathy creeping into her fingers and toes. When her hair began to fall out in clumps, she didn't hide behind a high-end wig for long. She proudly went on television completely bald, shattering the rigid beauty standards of network news and showing millions of women that their strength was far more beautiful than any aesthetic. She beat it. The tumors were gone, the scans came back clean, and the world breathed a massive sigh of relief, thinking the storm had finally passed. When you face a crisis, you realize just how fragile the ground beneath you actually is, and you learn exactly who is willing to stand on it with you. But the cruelest plot twist in Robin's life was yet to come. Fast forward 5 years to 2012. Robin was feeling healthy, strong, and entirely back in her element. Then, a strange, overwhelming fatigue began to cloud her days. She wasn't just tired from the early morning wake-up calls. This was a deep, bone-crushing exhaustion that felt entirely wrong. When her doctors ran a series of deep blood panels, the results revealed a nightmare scenario that felt completely unfair. Robin was diagnosed with myelodysplastic syndrome, or MDS. MDS is a rare, life-threatening blood disorder where the bone marrow completely stops producing enough healthy, functioning blood cells. Essentially, it is a form of pre-leukemia, and if left untreated, it almost always progresses into full-blown acute myeloid leukemia. But the real heartbreak of the diagnosis was its origin. This wasn't a random stroke of bad luck. Robin's MDS was a direct secondary consequence of the highly toxic chemotherapy and radiation she had used to save her life from breast cancer 5 years earlier. The very medicine that had rescued her from one killer had quietly damaged her DNA, setting off a ticking time bomb inside her bones. The prognosis was stark. Her only real chance at survival was a total bone marrow transplant, a high-stakes procedure that required wiping out her entire immune system to zero before rebuilding it from scratch. The search for a donor was a frantic race against time. Because of genetic complexities, finding a matching bone marrow donor is remarkably difficult, particularly for people of color who are severely underrepresented on international registries. In a profound stroke of absolute grace, the perfect genetic match was found right inside her own family. Her older sister, Sally Ann Roberts. What followed was a descent into a medical underworld that tested every ounce of Robin's spiritual and physical resolve. In late August of 2012, she stepped away from Good Morning America to enter medical isolation at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. The process was terrifying. To prepare her body to receive her sister's stem cells, doctors had to inject massive, near-lethal doses of chemotherapy to completely systematically destroy her own failing bone marrow. Her 5-foot 10-inch athletic frame withered away, dropping to a gaunt, heartbreaking 115 pounds. During the darkest days of that isolation, the emotional toll became almost too heavy to bear. Just days before she was scheduled to receive the transplant, her beloved mother, Lucy Marion, passed away back home in Mississippi. Robin was too weak, too compromised, and too physically trapped in her sterile hospital bubble to travel to her mother's funeral. The grief slammed into her at her absolute lowest physical point. There was a night during that recovery period when her white blood cell counts plummeted to virtually nothing. Robin has since shared that she felt her spirit genuinely slipping away. The physical pain was blinding, the grief of losing her mother was crushing, and she was ready to simply stop fighting. It was in that exact moment of surrender that an oncology nurse named Jenny Tran walked into the dark room. Sensing the crisis, the nurse stayed by her side, continually calling Robin's name, anchoring her back to reality when her mind was drifting toward the exit. To this day, Robin insists that while it was Jenny's physical voice in the room, it felt like her late mother's spirit pulling her back from the edge. On December 29, 2012, Robin hit the critical 100-day post-transplant milestone without severe graft-versus-host disease, the lethal complication where the donor cells attack the recipient's body. Against all medical odds, her sister's marrow took hold. Exactly 174 days after walking out of the studio, Robin walked back onto the set of Good Morning America, looked directly into the lens, and delivered a line that brought a nation to tears. "I've been waiting 174 days to say this. Good morning, America." She had survived the impossible. While Robin fought for her breath in a sterile hospital room, another vital piece of her world was quietly shifting in the background. Love in the shadows and facing the naysayers. Her survival wasn't just a solo act of medical endurance. It was anchored by a deeply private, fiercely protective love story that had intentionally stayed out of the network spotlight for nearly a decade. For years, the woman who knew everything about the lives of the world's biggest stars managed to keep her own greatest source of strength hidden in plain sight. Her relationship with Amber Lane, a massage therapist and co-founder of a holistic wellness brand, began way back in 2005 on a blind date set up by mutual friends. At the time, daytime television was a vastly different corporate landscape, and high-profile news anchors rarely risked their careers by letting the public into their private, same relationships. For the first 8 years of their journey, Amber was Robin's quiet rock, standing just off camera through the initial breast cancer battle, the agonizing MDS diagnosis, and the grueling recovery process. The general public had no idea that while Robin was inspiring millions with her courage, Amber was the one holding her hand through the night, managing the brutal realities of her treatment. It wasn't until late December 2013, in a simple, deeply moving end-of-year Facebook post reflecting on her recovery, that Robin officially acknowledged Amber to the world. She expressed profound gratitude for her entire support network, specifically thanking my longtime girlfriend, Amber. It wasn't a sensationalized primetime exclusive or a heavily managed PR campaign. It was a quiet, authentic statement of love and appreciation. The response from fans was an overwhelming wave of support, proving that the deep bond of trust Robin had spent years building with her audience was strong enough to weather any outdated societal expectations. True love doesn't require a public stage to exist, but when you finally step into the light together, the weight you drop is immeasurable. As the years progressed, their partnership only deepened, forged in the fires of mutual health crises. The universe tested their resolve once again when Amber was diagnosed with breast cancer, forcing Robin to step into the role of caregiver and navigate the terrifyingly familiar terrain of oncology waiting rooms from the other side of the curtain. They faced the storm together, matching each other's resilience step for step. Decades of quiet devotion culminated in a magnificent celebration when the couple officially tied the knot in September 2023. Surrounded by close friends, family, and her beloved Good Morning America co-stars, the wedding was a joyous, long-awaited triumph over years of secrecy and medical trauma. Even today, they maintain a refreshing, fiercely independent approach to their marriage, openly revealing that their secret to nearly 20 years of harmony includes maintaining separate apartments to give each other physical space amid their incredibly demanding schedules. Yet, living so authentically in the public eye inevitably brought its own set of unique challenges. While Robin is widely celebrated as a national treasure, an anchor on a major network flagship show is never entirely immune to the sharp sting of public scrutiny. Navigating the rigid corporate environment of Disney and ABC meant balancing her personal truths with the immense pressure of maintaining maximum mainstream appeal. In a deeply polarized media environment, any public figure who steps outside the traditional mold faces an undercurrent of online criticism. Over the years, a faction of traditionalist viewers and online critics occasionally targeted Robin, questioning her journalistic objectivity or criticizing her personal life choices. In the high-stakes world of morning news, where rating wars are won and lost on the margins of viewer relatability, even minor ripples of pushback are treated with intense corporate seriousness. Furthermore, as network television evolved into a fast-paced digital ecosystem, the pressure to deliver perfectly polished, unproblematic performance grew tenfold. Robin found herself walking a constant tightrope, remaining vulnerable enough to connect with millions of viewers on an emotional level, while keeping her guard high enough to shield her relationship and her peace of mind from the toxic elements of modern media culture. She handled the critics not by engaging in public feuds or defensive statements, but by double-rolling her commitment to her craft. letting her unshakable professionalism and warmth deliver the ultimate counter-argument. Yet, long before she became a symbol of medical resilience or a lightning rod for critics, she was carving out a historic legacy in a completely different arena. Reimagining morning television and the peak of success. By the time the mid-2000s rolled around, network morning television was a high-stakes, multi-billion-dollar battleground. For years, NBC's The Today Show had held an ironclad, seemingly unbreakable monopoly on the #1 spot in the ratings. ABC's Good Morning America was permanently stuck in second place, searching for the missing puzzle piece that could disrupt the status quo. Enter Robin Roberts. In May 2005, after serving as a featured reporter and contributor for years, Robin was officially promoted to co-anchor alongside broadcasting royalty Diane Sawyer and Charles Gibson. It was a risky move for a network trying to close a massive ratings gap, but it turned out to be one of the most brilliant staffing decisions in television history. What Robin brought to the table wasn't just a sharp journalistic mind, it was a completely fresh, disarming energy that rearranged the DNA of morning news. Morning television relies entirely on a concept known as relatability, the idea that viewers are letting you into their kitchens and bedrooms at their most vulnerable, groggy hours. While many network anchors of that era maintained a stiff, almost aristocratic journalistic distance, Robin felt like your favorite aunt or your wisest friend. Her chemistry with Diane Sawyer and Charlie Gibson was instant, effortless, and deeply compelling. They weren't just a collection of talking heads reading lines from a teleprompter, they functioned as a genuine broadcasting family. Robin's ability to seamlessly pivot from a hard-hitting political interview to a light-hearted lifestyle segment without skipping a beat completely redefined what a modern morning anchor could be. Morning television isn't about lecturing the audience from a high tower, it's about sitting at the kitchen table with them, sharing the truth, and holding space for whatever the day brings. That unique ability to hold space for the audience was put to the ultimate test just a few months into her tenure. In August 2005, Hurricane Katrina slammed into the Gulf Coast, leaving a trail of unprecedented, apocalyptic destruction. While the rest of the media elite flew into the disaster zone to report objectively on the rising waters, for Robin, the tragedy was deeply, painfully personal.
When Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, entire neighborhoods vanished under 20 feet of water. The devastation ranks as one of America's worst natural disasters.
She grew up in Pass Christian, Mississippi, a small coastal town that was entirely flattened by the storm. For days, as the hurricane raged and communication networks collapsed, Robin had no idea if her own mother and sister had survived. When she finally made it to the ground in Mississippi to broadcast live for Good Morning America, the emotional wall completely broke down. Standing amidst the pulverized ruins of her childhood home, looking out at a community that had been wiped off the map, Robin did something traditional journalists were trained never to do. She wept openly on live television. Clad in a simple t-shirt, her eyes red from tears and exhaustion, she hugged her sister Sally Ann on camera, showing the world the raw, unedited trauma of a daughter of the Gulf Coast. It was a watershed moment in television history. By shedding the artificial armor of clinical journalistic detachment, Robin gave voice to the collective grief of an entire region. It wasn't an act, and it wasn't a play for ratings. It was raw, unfiltered, human empathy. That broadcast solidified her bond with the American public in a way that no slick marketing campaign ever could. Viewers realized that Robin wasn't just reporting on their lives. She was feeling them. This deep-rooted authenticity became the rocket fuel that propelled Good Morning America into a new golden age. Following the departures of Gibson and Sawyer, Robin took the center seat, anchoring a powerhouse team that included George Stephanopoulos, Lara Spencer, and Josh Elliott. The collective alchemy of that crew, anchored by Robin's steady gravitational warmth, began chipping away at NBC's dominant lead. In April 2012, the impossible happened. Good Morning America officially broke the Today Show's historic 852-week consecutive winning streak, claiming the #1 spot in the ratings war. It was a monumental corporate triumph, but more importantly, it was a personal validation of Robin's humane, empathy-first approach to journalism. She had climbed to the absolute summit of her profession by simply being unapologetically herself, proving that kindness and journalistic integrity could dominate the most ruthless industry in entertainment. But that masterclass in broadcasting wasn't an accident. It was forged years earlier on dusty hardwood floors and under the bright lights of sports arenas. From the court to the anchor desk. Long before she was a household name guiding millions through the morning news, Robin Roberts was a fierce, relentless competitor who viewed the world through the lens of athletics. Her legendary grit wasn't just a trait she developed to fight off life-threatening illnesses. It was forged day after day on the dusty hardwood floors of Southern gymnasiums. Born into a pioneering family, her father, Lawrence Roberts, was a historic Tuskegee Airman colonel. Excellence was the baseline expectation in her household. Robin found her calling on the basketball court. When she arrived at Southeastern Louisiana University, she wasn't just another player on the roster. She became an absolute powerhouse for the Lady Lions. Wearing jersey number 21, Robin dominated the paint and the perimeter with a rare combination of physical intensity and sharp spatial intelligence. By the time her collegiate career came to a close in 1983, she had cemented herself as one of the most prolific players in the school's history. She racked up an incredible 1,446 career points and pulled down 1,034 rebounds, making her one of only 3 players in the university's history to crack the elite 1,000-point and 1,000-rebound milestones. Her senior season was a masterclass in athletic dominance, capped off by a career-high scoring average. Decades later, her impact on the game was immortalized when the university officially retired her number 21 jersey, and she was rightfully inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in 2012. The basketball court wasn't just a place where she won games. It was the crucible where she learned how to take a hit, recalibrate, and keep driving toward the basket. My college coaches taught me that talk is for dreams, but when you write it down, it becomes a goal. I wrote ESPN by 1990 on a piece of paper, and I never looked back. Armed with that relentless athletic mindset and a degree in communication, Robin set her sights on a new arena: sports journalism. At the time, the sports broadcasting landscape was an intensely hostile environment for outsiders. The industry was overwhelmingly white, intensely male-dominated, and deeply skeptical of women who wanted to talk strategy, stats, and play-by-play. But Robin had a game plan. Guided by advice from her mother, Lucy Marion, who emphasized the power of impeccable speech and authentic presence, Robin paid her dues in the trenches of local television.
It's part of my DNA,
Yes.
and I had no intentions of being in news, and I was working in local television and sports, living happily ever after, always getting asked to do news, and I realized I was saying no out of habit.
She climbed the ladder step by grueling step, moving from Hattiesburg to Biloxi, then to Nashville, and eventually to a major market in Atlanta at WAGA-TV. Along the way, she consistently turned down higher-paying, non-sports gigs because she refused to compromise on her ultimate vision. In February 1990, exactly matching the timeline of her written goal, the ultimate call came. Robin was hired by ESPN, breaking a monumental glass ceiling as the network's very first black on-air anchorwoman. Walking into the Bristol, Connecticut studios, she didn't just blend into the corporate culture, she completely electrified it. As a host on SportsCenter, Robin brought an unmatched credibility to the desk. When she spoke about a defensive breakdown or a clutch fourth-quarter performance, the viewers and the athletes knew she wasn't just reading a script, she had lived it. She popularized the vibrant, iconic catchphrase, "Go on with your bad self," weaving a distinct thread of black cultural joy into the mainstream sports lexicon. Her 15-year tenure at ESPN was defined by an unprecedented string of broadcasting firsts. Robin didn't just report from the sidelines, she commanded the center stage. She became the first woman ever to co-host network television's flagship pro football show, NFL Primetime. She provided sharp, analytical play-by-play commentary for men's college basketball games, covered multiple Olympic Games with absolute poise, and hosted ABC's legendary Wide World of Sports. She earned 2 Emmy Awards during her sports tenure, proving to a skeptical industry that a black woman could not only survive in the sports world, but dominate it entirely. Robin's historic rise from a standout collegiate athlete to an elite sports media pioneer rewrote the rulebook for what women could achieve in television. The sharp journalistic instincts, the rapid-fire adaptability required during a live broadcast breakdown, and the absolute refusal to buckle under intense cultural pressure were all skills cultivated during those high-stakes ESPN years. Every barrier she shattered and every critic she silenced during her sportscasting era laid the groundwork for her transition to daytime television. When she finally stepped away from the sports desk to conquer morning news, she brought an entire lifetime of competitive resilience with her, proving that she was uniquely equipped to handle whatever storm the universe threw her way next. From the basketball court to the anchor chair, every victory she claimed paved the way for the ultimate role she plays today. A survivor at 65. Roberts is no longer just a television anchor or a sports pioneer. She has transcended the medium entirely to become a living blueprint for human resilience. While her broadcasting accolades are immense, her most enduring legacy is measured not in ratings points or Emmy statuettes, but in the lives she actively saved by simply choosing to be vulnerable.
I had grown accustomed to getting tested, but this was different. I went to see this specialist toward the end of March, and that was the first time I heard MDS.
When Robin pulled back the curtain on her terrifying battle with MDS in 2012, she did more than raise awareness. She triggered a historic medical movement. The day she went public with her diagnosis, the Be the Match registry experienced an unprecedented, staggering 1,800% spike in bone marrow donors. Hundreds of thousands of people signed up to spit into a vial, completely altering the global donor landscape and giving thousands of anonymous, critically ill patients their own second chance at life. By intentionally documenting her darkest medical moments, Robin demystified a terrifying process and turned her private trauma into a massive, life-saving public service campaign. For a woman who spent her early career breaking barriers as a minority in sports media, she spent her later years dismantling inequities in healthcare, passionately fighting to ensure that underserved communities and women of color had access to the exact same life-saving resources that rescued her. Optimism is like a muscle that gets stronger with use. It doesn't mean you ignore the darkness. It means you trust that the light will return if you keep moving forward. But the freshest, most poignant angle of Robin Roberts' legacy at 65 isn't just about what she survived in the past. It's about how she is actively rewriting what a final chapter looks like in real time. Historically, when a network anchor hits their mid-60s after facing catastrophic health crises, the industry expects them to quietly wind down, scale back, and retreat into a comfortable, padded retirement. Robin is doing the exact opposite. Instead of letting her past health battles shrink her world, she has unlocked a profound creative renaissance, stepping out from behind the safety of the Good Morning America anchor desk to conquer entirely new creative frontiers. She isn't just surviving day to day, she is actively expanding her empire. Through her production banner, Rockin' Robin Productions, she has transitioned from being the person who merely reports the news to the visionary storyteller shaping global cultural narratives. Whether she is jetting off to Cape Town, South Africa to produce major international film projects, or leading deep-dive genealogical investigations like her groundbreaking historical special uncovering the hidden enslaved builders of the White House, Robin is leaning directly into heavy, essential American truths. Even more beautifully, she is using this milestone era to experience a full-circle homecoming to her deep athletic roots. Decades after breaking barriers at ESPN, she is stepping back into the sports arena, sitting courtside to commentate on the explosive, historic rise of the WNBA, a league she helped introduce to the world nearly 30 years ago. By executive producing sports docuseries and mentoring the next generation of female athletes and broadcasters, she is ensuring that the glass ceilings she cracked stay permanently shattered. Today, looking at Robin in her age, the narrative is beautifully bittersweet. Her life is a profound testament to the fact that survival is not a static destination or a permanent resting place. but an ongoing, active choice. She still carries the physical and emotional scars of a body that has weathered chemotherapy, radiation, and a complete cellular reboot. The 3 a.m. alarm clocks still take a very real, quiet toll. Yet, she approaches this season of her life not with fatigue, but with a radical, infectious sense of reinvention. The true majesty of Robin Roberts is that she remains the ultimate symbol of hope for millions of people navigating their own private storms. When she smiles into the lens every morning, it isn't the superficial grin of a detached celebrity. It is the triumphant smile of someone who has looked deep into the abyss, felt the cold pull of the edge, and decided to fight her way back to the table to build something even bigger than before. She stands as a powerful reminder that while tragedy may break the body, a fierce, loving, and fundamentally optimistic spirit remains completely unbreakable. Hit that subscribe button for similar celebrity stories in this channel. Thanks for watching.